bit of a tricky one because your Letterboxd said trying to broaden my taste in film, but most times I'd rather just watch something animated. So I was torn between wanting to help broaden your taste, but also wanting to recommend more animated films. But you've seen so many animated movies. Out of the hundreds of animated films that came to mind, only around 20 of them weren't marked as watched. So let's see how this goes. Your four favorites are Balto, Zootopia, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. I want to start off by recommending Who Framed Roger Rabbit because I think it's essential viewing for anyone who's passionate about animation. And you've got a mix of animation and live action in your favorites, and this movie combines the two. Like Zootopia, it involves an anthropomorphic rabbit and a crime investigation, and there are different social groups coexisting, but in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it's toons and humans, and in Zootopia, it's predators and prey. Based on your reviews, I think The Perks of Being a Wallflower might resonate with you. Like Balto, the protagonist initially doesn't fit in. Like Zootopia, it explores the concept of being judged and the assumptions people make about you, while also exploring how friendship can lead to growth and understanding. Like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, there are morally ambiguous characters. And like I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, it captures the impact human connection can have on someone's life. And you mentioned in one of your reviews for that movie how the main character finally comes out of his shell, which is also a crucial component of this movie. The Nice Guys, like Balto, has characters who are outsiders or underestimated. Like Zootopia, it's got comedy and that buddy dynamic where the two main characters are trying to solve a mystery or crime. It's got plenty of action like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And like I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, the characters experience growth through the connections they form with each other. Hot Fuzz also came to mind for similar reasons, mostly in comparison to Zootopia. City Lights has an underestimated outsider for a protagonist like Balto. Like Zootopia, it's got humor and explores how people make assumptions about each other that lead to misunderstandings. It's got an iconic ending like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And like I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, it's about emotional connection. The Silence of the Lambs has an underestimated protagonist like Balto who has a lot in common with Judy from Zootopia because she's a trainee or a rookie investigator, but she's fiercely determined. And even though the dynamic is very different, she enlists the help of someone with a criminal background. There's also a reference to this movie in Zootopia too. Like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, there's a lot of tension and psychological power plays involving morally ambiguous characters. And like I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, one character has a major impact on the protagonist's worldview. Also, there's talk about eating someone's organs. One of the few animated films you didn't have marked as watched happens to be my favorite animated film of all time, It's Such a Beautiful Day. But I'm not just recommending it because it's my favorite. It actually came to mind while I was watching I Want to Eat Your Pancreas because it deals with mortality and what it means to truly be alive. And like Balto, it's an animated movie that incorporates some live action in it. Another one of my favorite films also came to mind while watching I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, but this one isn't animated, and that's Ikiru. It kind of has an underdog story like Balto where the protagonist is overlooked but becomes sort of a hero, and it involves wanting to help people and the legacies we leave behind. Like Zootopia, the protagonist has to go up against institutions in order to do what's morally right. Like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it has to do with human nature, greed, and survival. And like I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, a character has a terminal illness, and there's this exploration of how facing mortality changes our outlook on what it means to live, and it's also about meaningful human connections. White Fang is pretty much the only movie that I think is truly comparable to Balto that you didn't already have marked as watch. I haven't recommended enough animated films yet, so I'm going to throw in Mary and Max. This one also has outsider protagonists like Balto that explores how misunderstanding can arise based on our assumptions of others like Zootopia. And also like Zootopia, it's about two characters forming an unexpected bond. And like I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, it's a bittersweet film about human connection and how that can lead to emotional growth. I mentioned connection, emotional growth, and characters who are outsiders multiple times in reference to your favorites. So with all those ideas in mind, plus your love for animation, I think you should check out My Life as a Zucchini, Tokyo Godfathers, Over the Garden Wall, Frankenweenie, Kiki's Delivery Service, and Persepolis. Since you like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and you've already seen the other two films in that trilogy, I think you should check out Once Upon a Time in the West, which is another epic spaghetti western with the same director, cinematographer, and composer. But if you prefer your westerns with Clint Eastwood in them, then I'd recommend Unforgiven. And another western I want to recommend is The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which also involves a journey through harsh conditions like Balto. I want to recommend two classic silent films that inspired scenes in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and those are Greed and The General. And there were a few live action films that came to mind while I was watching I Want to Eat Your Pancreas that I'm a little iffy about recommending because I'm not sure how you'll feel about them. And those are Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, A Walk to Remember, and The Fault in Our Stars.